IVM.
Credit card payments have never been more fun because Cred has made it all so convenient. Cred is an exclusive club of highly trustworthy individuals where you get a chance to win some amazing rewards and cashbacks. I love how this app rewards me for doing something good and makes the whole process so fun. All you have to do is pay your credit card bills on time. It's that easy. So don't miss out. Just download Cred.
Hi!
You sound nervous. Like, legitimately, your eye was so scared today.
My heart is racing. I've been preparing for this like an exam for the last 3 hours.
Honestly, same. But obviously, from the title of this episode, it's clear why you and I are nervous. We are 10,000% outside our depth. But that's why we have two very exciting guests on the show today. Because it's so complicated that one person wasn't enough. We decided to F up everything with 4 audio at one time.
It's gonna be great because I'm gonna be on mute for 87.5% of this conversation.
Yes, this is a first in ASA history. We are going to keep quiet.
I'd like to see Ayushi be quiet.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's like an actual challenge. But at least now I know that I'm out of my depth completely. So I'm going to obviously take a back seat. However, that puts a lot of pressure on our guests. So shall we quickly introduce them?
Without further ado, shall we have these two very smart, very, very... they're great writers also, both of them, amongst the other things they do.
They wanted to introduce each other, so let them do that.
So I'll give Aaryaman full props. This is Rahul, by the way. I'm sure your listeners are well aware of me, but they're not messing around. But Aaryaman in certain circles is known as the crypto prophet because he's single-handedly responsible for, I would say, 20% of crypto people in India knowing or understanding Bitcoin. Your favorite politician, your favorite industrialist, sportsman, your favorite group member has likely directly or indirectly learned about crypto from Aaryaman. So I would say that this is probably a treat for your listeners because there's no one better to explain this stuff. And that's the most generous thing I will give him ahead of this conversation.
This is the nicest thing you've said about him ever, I think.
Because he's, my interest in crypto goes back to a conversation we had 6 years ago now. And that obviously led me down the rabbit hole, and he's been radicalizing people since then. So I think my main point here is that if the government wants to come after one single person, AaryamanVir is the person they should come after.
If we could clap on the show, we would, but we're not supposed to because it messes up the audio.
Excellent. Thank you.
Welcome, Aaryaman.
Thank you. So Rahul, cheers for throwing me under the bus there. But guys, I'm Aaryaman. I run something called Prophetic Ventures that does something. But more importantly, I'm about to introduce Rahul, who, as you just heard, was one of my first converts to the Church of Bitcoin. Rahul used to work at one of the country's largest crypto exchanges, where he helped himself to lots of insider information and deal flow. No, just kidding. But he was an important team member at CoinEx, and then he is currently the fintech lead for Visa in Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and Myanmar, and the Maldives. And
I legit did not know
he's
this.
the Maldives fintech ecosystem would be nothing without him. So it's the most I can say about the incredible work he does.
What is this? Anyway, continue.
I can neither confirm or deny. But why I knew he was going to say this because he usually just springs up another country neighboring India. I think this is the first time Myanmar has entered that sentence. But
it's true. I mean, technically, he's fintech lead for Visa in South Asia. So everything.
So it's anything, really. It's any Southeast
Afghanistan
Asian
fintech
country.
synonymous with Rahul Sanghi. There you go.
I have heard that in the carpet markets. That's true. I have.
All over that stuff. I wanted to ask, you guys did a Mother's Day episode recently, right? What was the response to that?
My mom wanted to know whether 5,000 people had listened to the show. and where her fans were. She's like, has anyone written to you? And I was like, yeah, like a couple people. What does a couple mean? I was like, 3.
Same,
like,
like 2 people wrote.
Yeah, it's like 3 people wrote. And she's like, oh, I thought like 5,000 people must have like responded. But I like that she thinks we are so wildly successful. I like that. It made me feel good about myself.
Yeah, so you guys don't need to get your hopes up, but now with your audience and our audience, we'll merge the audiences.
And it'll be like 9 solid people.
Yeah.
Our audience have zero faith in us because we write something once every 12 months. That's.
I was gonna say. Also, Rahul and Aaryaman have a joint venture, which is very exciting. Though it's, I don't know whether like how much to plug it now. Well, we can talk about it later, I guess. We're at the end if you want to talk about it. If you want to plug it.
Sure. So, I mean, we write a garage band-esque newsletter called Tigerfeathers, which means nothing. And we tend to write about tech and the startup ecosystem in India. And Aaryaman, for anyone who's interested, I'm sure after this chat, to go deeper, has written a really great post on how Bitcoin actually works, and which has blown up recently, along with a great piece about a homegrown crypto project that's been in the news. So if anyone wants to check that out, tigerfeathers.substack.com.
Yeah, I have to say, guys, I didn't listen. I read both of these today, and it has left me in the state that I am in currently, which is struggling. I'm only looking at things in blockchains now, and I'm like hashing kya hota hai. And
I have a lot of personal questions that I Googled today, and then I was like, this is so stupid. Like, if I'm having people come on the show, I'm just going to ask you, because that's kind of the point of the show, is to just bring people that we actually want to hang out with and talk to. That's what we've been using it for. So I think we should dive in. And the best, I'll start with just one question, then you guys can decide how you want to answer it. It's more like what our producer gave us as one question, which is great. How would you explain cryptocurrency to a 5-year-old? Or if we were 5?
I would say it's so I presume, and I'll obviously let Arya go after, but does this 5-year-old use the internet or understand the internet?
Okay, 5-year-old was really young. Like, I do not think a 5-year-old. You obviously knew what I meant.
Yeah.
When I said 5-year-old.
Okay. At the absolute most simplest, Bitcoin is just an innovative way to transfer value over the internet. That's as simple as it gets. It becomes interesting because of the implications of that innovation. So the origins of Bitcoin go back to 2008 in the wake of the financial crisis, where a person or group going by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto published this white paper or blog post online on an online mailing list, essentially proposing for the creation of a new monetary system without the use of central intermediaries, which is ironic because I work for Visa right now. But essentially, a lot of the infrastructure that supports the global monetary system is the result of a lack of trust between people and institutions. So the reason you have banks sitting between a buyer and seller across international lines, why you have a various assortment of players each taking a cut in between, is because they overcome the lack of trust between transacting parties. And Satoshi proposed an entirely new monetary system without the use of central intermediaries that essentially swapped out institutions for code. Aaryaman,
yeah, sure.
For computer
I'll
code.
pick up where you left off, Rahul. But Rahul said that Bitcoin is an innovative way to transfer value over the internet, right? So let me try to break that down for a 5-year-old. So when you transfer value in person, you do it in cash. And when I give you cash that I have in my hand, you take that cash, you put it in your pocket, and I no longer have that cash with me. It's impossible for me to spend that same cash at another place because I don't have the cash with me anymore in my hand. That's fine. Now, what happens if this cash is electronic and we're moving this cash over a computer system? All data in computer systems is infinitely replicable. You can just copy and paste it infinite times. So if I'm sending you digital cash, then what is the guarantee that I can't just send that same digital cash to somebody else, right? And this is known as the double spend problem. So we get around the double spend problem in our existing financial system because whoever is creating this electronic cash transfer system says, I will take responsibility for making sure double spends don't happen. And in our case, that's the banks. They are the ones who say that, hey, I will take charge of the ledger of transactions and ensure that when Aaryaman spends cash, his account is debited so that same cash cannot be spent by Aaryaman again. And I will make sure that the ledger stays intact, everything stays in order, all transactions are properly done, etc. That's fantastic. But having this bank or central intermediary taking charge of the ledger can introduce potential problems. So an example is that in Costa Rica, a lot of the prime beachfront property was coveted real estate, as you would imagine. And one day, families that had that real estate woke up with the army knocking on their door saying, hi, Jose, nice farm. Can I please have it? And Jose was like, what? This is my ancestral family beach house. And the army was like, yeah, well, it doesn't say that on my ledger, my land registry, which says that it belongs to the army. And then you really have no choice, you're getting kicked out. So that's an extreme case, although it did happen, not to a guy called Jose, but actually probably to a guy called Jose. But the point is that having this kind of central gatekeeper take charge of a ledger of accounts introduces the possibility and potential for abuse in the form of censorship. So your transactions don't get included, alteration of history, fraudulent transactions. It introduces potential problems and it gives one party a lot of power over the whole system. Right? You're living and dying at their hands, essentially. And our banks don't abuse this position of trust usually, but it's a possibility. And this guy who Rahul referred to, this pseudonymous coder who created the Bitcoin computer program, said that, hey, I want to solve the double spend problem when it comes to electronic money without introducing a central intermediary who takes charge of the whole system. So in his imagination, instead of there being one master copy of the ledger, which is controlled by a bank or gatekeeper, he said that let me give this ledger to anyone. What does that mean? That means that anybody who downloads the Bitcoin computer program, their computer keeps a local copy of the ledger containing all transactions of this program. And now nobody needs to trust a central intermediary to know what's happening in the Bitcoin ledger. They can just look at their own local copy. So instead of having one master copy at a central place, everyone who wishes to be part of the system has their own local copy of the ledger. Now, this is a completely useless concept unless all copies of that ledger held by all parties are in sync, right? Because if the ledger was different for you and me, we would never agree on who had what balance or who had what funds, and we could not do any business. But if all the ledgers are in sync, then we can. And luckily, Bitcoin uses very clever concepts from computer science, cryptography, which is a branch of mathematics associated with hiding information, and economic game theory to make sure that incentives stay aligned for all parties and these ledgers stay in sync no matter what. So without a central intermediary, these ledgers can stay in sync and people can send and receive money over this value system without worrying that some one party can come and them.
Shit. That was actually
but for
that was
a
great.
layperson also, this is a lot of information. Because firstly, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this concept. And it requires there's a lot of science and technology and mathematics in this. And I'm just
Yeah, but that's all under the hood. We don't need to, you don't need that.
But you guys have delved in so deeply into it. Can you talk about what made you fall in love with it and want to know more, and what started this
what
love affair?
attracted you to the whole concept,
this world? Yeah.
So one, I am a layperson. So the way I understand this stuff is to be able to explain it simply or to understand it simply. So if it's any easier, the first way I understood at least what a blockchain is, and this entire system of distributed ledgers that Aaryaman's talking about is essentially a blockchain because it uses a chain of blocks, each containing transactions over the Bitcoin network. I'm just trying to decide how deep we want to go here. But it's a blockchain, a chain of blocks containing transactions. But essentially, the functionality of this is to be an accounting system. And all of these computers, or some of these computers on this network, essentially play the role of decentralized auditors. So in place of banks, as Aaryaman said, manually debiting and crediting the individual ledgers of transacting parties, you have computers on this network doing that same job. So you don't need a central intermediary to do this job because all the participants, the willing participants in this network are doing it for you. So the innovation here is an accounting system to verify the authenticity of a digital asset, i.e. money, or in this case, Bitcoin. I suppose maybe another way to say it is a blockchain enables parties that don't trust each other to agree on a set of facts. Or again, in this instance, to agree on the contents of a database, which for the Bitcoin network contains a record of who owns how much Bitcoin and what transactions are taking place on the network. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I? So I'm not trying to interrupt you. I just had a question. You were talking. This is not about Bitcoin, it's about blockchain. So I read somewhere, as obviously your listeners know, because I work in commodities, I was looking at the implications for, like, say, the agricultural sector. And a really big way that blockchain initially, this was a couple of years ago, I haven't obviously kept up with it, but this was a kind of case study that I read, which is like to track actually whether something is single origin, or to see whether a commodity, how many times a commodity has changed hands before it got to the supermarket, from the farm to the supermarket. So when you talk about concepts like farm to table, organic, local, you'd actually be able to, like, verify how honest that product is. So the entire concept was that you'd be able to see, and help me here. How would you use blockchain to do that?
You're on your own, absolutely on your own here. No, I'm kidding. So look, I think before we get into that, right, there's many applications for any kind of technology, and in this podcast, why don't we, like, when I talk about Bitcoin to people, when I talk about cryptocurrencies and blockchains to people, I tend to focus on Bitcoin because I feel like understanding Bitcoin at a conceptual level, at a high enough level, really helps make everything else easy. But then if you begin to go into specific use cases, it can be quite mind melting. So maybe do you want to?
But I thought that to, like, understand. But I thought to understand Bitcoin, you need to. So then maybe I'm wrong. You don't. Do you not need to understand blockchain to understand Bitcoin?
I can explain blockchain in the context of Bitcoin, and it'll make a lot more sense for everything, I think. So why don't we just talk about what a blockchain is? Right?
Okay, fine.
So just what I was saying earlier, Bitcoin, basically the whole point of Bitcoin, the reason that Satoshi invented Bitcoin was because he wanted to build a payment system where people could transfer value from one person to another without needing that payment system to rely on any trusted intermediary, right? And when we discussed how he achieved that, by instead of having this ledger controlled by the intermediary, he gave the ledger to everyone and then built a bunch of principles into the code of this program that ensured that all those disparate decentralized ledgers held by whoever was running the program remained in sync. So that's what he did. And in the ledger, which comprises this whole Bitcoin value transfer system, transactions are grouped into batches called blocks for the sake of processing efficiency, the same reason why banks process RTGS transfers in batches, right? So batch processing is a common thing for efficiency's sake. And in the case of the Bitcoin value transfer system, all transactions are included in something called a block. These blocks have certain mathematical properties that make it such that the ordering of blocks as well as the content of blocks cannot be tampered with without raising an alarm. So if all the blocks are lined up chronologically, starting from block number 0, and then it goes down to block number 658,000, which is the current block that we're on or something like that, and they all in order and in sequence. They have this mathematical property to them that if anybody tries to mess with any of the blocks, going back to the very first block, it becomes immediately obvious to anybody who bothers to do a 2-second check that, hey, this version of events is actually not true because, all actions that happen in Bitcoin happen using some kind of mathematical proof. So you can't do a transaction without there being some mathematical evidence of, that you intended to do XYZ transaction. So basically, the properties of Bitcoin make it such that all these transactions are included in blocks, and the blocks are chained together in such a way that altering the history of transactions is basically impossible. And that's why the ledger is called a blockchain.
So you can essentially append a blockchain, you can add new transactions or new blocks to it, but you can't go back and change history effectively, which is what I guess he was trying to say. But with your puzzled expressions, I remain confused by the current
No.
sentiment.
No. Sorry,
I
that's just our
read all
face.
of this today in Aaryaman's article, which I have to say is really very, very well written.
Yeah.
And for any beginner who is clueless like me, I would say you read that article first and then come back and maybe listen to the rest of the episode, or read it immediately after.
I would say read it before. We should put that as a
Disclaimer.
like
Did
a-
that
yeah.
not make sense though? I mean,
For
the blockchain.
It did.
Okay.
It did.
It does, but it just blows my mind that somebody has thought of creating
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff blows my mind. The other day we were
Mhm.
talking about oxygen and how oxygen is being delivered to hospitals and stuff, and the fact that you can't see oxygen. Some guy at some point was like, "Hey, the air is made of things, and we can figure out ways to get one thing out of the air." Like, what? Doesn't make any sense. Anyway,
That actually was the start of the invention of recording sound, was when they realized that like air carried sound waves, which is when they realized that you can actually means that you can extract something and create a vacuum. And that's how you like the invention of like the gramophone and like eventually all the way to the telephone was because they realized that air was made up of things. And if you could take stuff out of it, you could manipulate
yeah.
what was left in it, which was either sound or waves
Technology
of
is
vacuum. So
That's
yeah,
how they-
it's
Hmm.
pardon?
I was going to make a really stupid joke. I was going to say, oh, that's how they invented sounds. What did people do before that? Just mime. But I bailed, and then you asked me. Sorry. Apologies.
Okay,
Oh,
let's go.
yikes.
But
Let's
you
go.
doubled down. But you
I did
doubled
double
down
down. I
on
did
it
double
though.
down. I
You
did
did.
double down. I
You
did
went
double
with it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. This is a safe space for stupidity.
Great.
Thanks.
But I think the reason
Call the
why
right people.
I do think the reason why we look why the expression was so like puzzled or whatever, it's because I think we're so used to thinking of transactions and functions in the very obvious way that exists.
Of money.
Of
And-
money,
yeah.
exactly. And that digital transactions and digital payments, that seems like, oh, this is new. Like we've just started transacting on the internet. We've just started realizing that it's safe to send money from one phone to another using a variety of apps or whatever. And the idea of online shopping, purchasing, all of this is relatively, I would say, new. So now you've added this, and this is the new thing, which is Bitcoin. And you're trying to have these conversations at the dinner table. You're talking to your parents, and your parents are like, so what is Bitcoin? And you're like, well, it's currency, but it's this new way of doing it, and it's outside a regulatory body. But actually, the reason why it's outside the regulatory body is because we thought that the other ones had too much regulation, so we made this one. But then the problem with this one is that it keeps fluctuating and it keeps changing. So really, you can't tell, because in one day it could be here or there. And then somebody tweeted something, so then it completely went insane. And then he retracted it, so then it didn't make any sense. So, and I'm not oversimplifying it. I'm trying to say that that's why sometimes it's so hard to understand or take this whole thing in, because what you described is actually quite a beautiful process. If you look at what numbers can do, like if you put code together, look at what you can have.
I
is
would
what you
watch a
described.
movie, an animated movie where the characters are different bit things, cryptocurrencies, and they're doing their thing. And I would watch this movie. It seems damn interesting.
But that's what, so you described it as something, but then when you see sometimes the way it's represented, or it's made a lot more complicated perhaps, and it's not very digestible. So I think there's a lot of reluctance or fear or suspicion still around it
Yeah. So
outside of your communities.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the tricky part is that Bitcoin means many things to many people. And if you ask folks that have been in this space for a while, you might get very different answers for how they view Bitcoin or what they feel is its most important utility in society. So, for example,
Right.
Bitcoin is an asset in that you can invest in it with the hope that it appreciates in value. It appreciates and depreciates in value. You can use it as a medium of exchange, so to buy and sell goods and services from the people people or merchants that accept Bitcoin. And also, which is Bitcoin is a network. And here it's probably the most important facet of Bitcoin is the fact that it's created this decentralized network of computers all over the world running the Bitcoin software. And you can download the Bitcoin software and be a participant on this network. You can get a copy of every single transaction that's ever taken place on the network, even though that would take up a lot of space. So it has a lot of uses, and even though the original use case, or at least Satoshi's original paper, envisioned this system of peer-to-peer electronic cash. So ideally, this would be used as a payment system almost to replace your Visas and MasterCards to become an instant, free way to
100%.
transfer value over the internet.
What Rahul said is true, but what I think most of your viewers, listeners want to know about is that
Dogecoin.
It's just like, can I like? I don't know. Like, what's the point, right?
I was very amused.
So the
by
point
that,
of
certainly.
I do want to know about that. By
But
the
the
way,
predominant
eventually.
narrative for Bitcoin right now globally is that Bitcoin has a chance of becoming digital gold. What that means is it can become a strategic reserve asset that companies, individuals, countries can hold in their portfolios as a hedge against inflation and current monetary policy risk, similar to the way that they hold gold. So basically what happens is that if you have money, right, money comes from the central bank of a country. That bank has a big printer that goes brrr, and that printer makes a bunch of money. And the bank, and the central bank gives that money to commercial banks and to other players and tells them, hey, now lend this money out, right? Give it to the government, or like lots of things happen. The point is that the central bank can keep printing money, and they do keep printing money. And as they keep printing money, no one really knows what happens next, right? Like as human beings, we have not really lived through, we don't know too much what happens when you print a lot of money. We've seen in the past that you can have hyperinflation, which is what happens when, today, let's say there's 100 rupees that's circulating in our little community, and the bank comes and does brr and gives us 200 rupees. And now, like, all of us have, twice as much money as we had before. Probably the people who are selling us services and products will charge more money for that because they know that there's more money out there and we have more money to spend. And therefore, the prices of goods and services go up, and that's inflation. And over a period of time, inflation means that you can buy less and less stuff. And if you can buy less and less stuff in one certain currency, because too much of that currency is being printed, you would rather hold something else, like gold, which nobody is printing at will. So the total supply of gold in existence is not increasing like a crazy amount.
It's finite.
So Bitcoin has similar properties. In fact, there's probably one useful mental model for you guys to hear, which is that, so there's one school of thought that suggests that there are 6 desirable qualities for a store of value like gold. Right? Like everybody owns gold, right? Every country in the world, people own gold, and they own gold for these 6 reasons. They hold gold because it's scarce, it's uniform, which means that 1 gram of gold is equal to 1 gram of gold. It's portable, you can move it around from place to place. It's durable, it's accepted widely, and it's easily divisible. These are the properties you want from a store of value. And when gold started off, we don't really know too much about the origins of gold. It's very fascinating, but what most people may not know is that gold actually is pretty worthless. Like there's no inherent value to gold. Like some people like to think there is, but if I took a kilogram of gold and I sold it at spot price to investors, those investors would pay me almost 10 times as much as if I took that same amount of gold and I tried to sell it to people who had industrial uses of it. Right? So the industrial uses of gold in, for example, electronics and other kinds of manufacturing, the price of gold, if it was purely sort of utility based, would be less than 10 times what it is on the investment market, the spot market. So that means that clearly we attribute like a huge amount of value to gold that is like not actually anchored in any reality. So most people kind of don't know that. And nothing that we actually own or invest in has any fundamental value at all. Like a rupee, a dollar, a share of Apple, nothing has any underlying value to it.
That should be the quote from this episode. Nothing has value.
Yeah.
Nothing you own has any value.
So anyway, so I mean, gold has this chance of becoming, Bitcoin has a chance of challenging gold because, Bitcoin actually does very well on those 6 attributes that I mentioned in terms of its scarcity, its uniformity, portability, divisibility, acceptability, and durability. Well, I mean, I can get more into each of those things. I don't know if you want me to, but it's probably useful from an educational perspective. I
No,
don't know.
would you, if just one that jumped out would be acceptability, do you think that would be its biggest challenge as of now? It's
No,
just its
absolutely. Yeah,
acceptability
definitely. That
worldwide?
is the biggest challenge. Gold has 5,000 years of history on its side, right? And like in the first year of gold's history, people were probably like, hey, gold sucks. I like rocks way better. But, now 5,000 years later, the gold has beaten rocks. So Bitcoin still has to, get past the rocks and gold phase. But actually, if you interview people below the age of 30, most of them would rather invest in Bitcoin than gold. So, maybe the acceptability thing is also changing, but we don't really know because Bitcoin may, itself be challenged by other things in the future. And, it's a big question mark about the future in general.
Okay, no. Let's go back to the original thing that Rytasha was asking you. What attracted it to you? What attracted Bitcoin as something to pursue deeply from a professional level, as well as something that you're personally clearly very passionate about or interested in? What was it that drew
Rahul,
you into it?
Should I answer this question since your answer to this question is Aaryaman?
Yeah, sure. We could just say we were young punks, and this was anti-establishment and the cool thing at the time, which I don't think it is now. But that sort of seeps into it. Is the implications of Bitcoin to society tend to chime well with an anti-establishment, anti-authority sentiment, which is why it's so common for people under 30 to naturally gravitate towards it.
Right.
And it's almost like anytime you see something stupid happen politically or economically, there'll be someone that says, hey, we have Bitcoin as an antidote to all of this. So I think you can easily be, and the memes primarily, it's the memes and the fact that the Bitcoin story is so tied at its core to believing in an idea more than anything else, because it's just as an innovation is literally just an accounting system.
No, that's not.
Right.
But once you, I mean, it's an accounting system that seeks to solve for the double spend problem of digital assets. But once you tag on the mythology around it, and you look at it through the lens of the time that we're living through, when there's a lack of trust in institutions or as its origin in the wake of the financial crisis, I think it becomes a very
that makes sense. I mean, I can answer for myself. Like, I came across Bitcoin in college. I was doing a class called The History of Money. And the professor was like, he took us through the origins of money and the different forms of money over the years. And then at the end, he was like, well, is this the future of money? And he was like, this thing called Bitcoin, which at the time was like, 3 years old or something. And I just didn't understand it. I was like, what is this thing? Like, what do you mean that some guy invented money or like a money system out of computer code? Like, what does that even mean? I just can't even comprehend that. It took me a long time to try to understand like what it meant. And when it did finally click in my head, because I spent time trying to understand the different technical features that make it possible, and that's what I've written about in my article. When I understood how it all clicks and works, it blew my mind because it's one of the most elegant and beautifully designed systems. So anybody who's a fan of engineering, anybody who's a fan of like inventing stuff or just understanding how stuff works, it's a very elegant, beautiful system. And as Rahul says, it has like an incredible mythology around it, right? Like, just imagine like you're selling a story to like a film producer and you're like, so this guy invents or girl invents money, like a form of money that, in his like basement, and then, invents it, puts it out into the world, and then disappears off the face of the earth 1 year later. So nobody knows if they're like alive or dead. However, the system they created goes on to achieve widespread popularity because people are really drawn to its message of giving independence to people and removing the reliance on third-party brokers like governments and banks, and one day becomes a financial asset worth $1 trillion. Like, that is just an insane story, right? So like that definitely brings a lot of people in, and like the fact that it's humanity's attempt at untying the money from state, right? The same way that religion and state were separated by Martin Luther. Satoshi was like, well, here you go, state. I'm gonna untether your money. And that's pretty cool.
Do you think it would ever replace actual like hard money eventually? Or do you think it'll be like a dual system where you have this and that?
So right now, it's not like well placed just technically to replace the monetary systems or the payment networks we use on a day-to-day basis. Like Visa and Mastercard, for example, for digital payments are way better and more scalable to process the volume of transactions happening anywhere in the world. So Bitcoin is not well suited for that, even though that was the original intent. So it's much likelier that Bitcoin winds up as this digital gold alternative, viewed in the same way as gold, as a long-term store of value, as opposed to say something we use to transact on a day-to-day basis. So I think we'll probably have both. I mean, there are innovations that are trying to sort of increase the potential of Bitcoin to replace these the networks we use on a day-to-day basis. But I would say that's still a few years down the line for most people in any case. So I think coexisting is probably the best bet as of now.
Well, I mean, eventually, all of these currencies like rupees, pesos, reals, whatever, all of these currencies that countries around the world, print and use as legal tender, these currencies will eventually be reflected in upgraded value transfer systems. What do I mean by that? I mean that today, when you do like a transaction on Google Pay or whatever, the value is being transferred over a computer system, right? Because it's a digital payment you're doing. And those computer systems, which are run by the banks, are very, very old, right? They are just outdated. As technologies, we can probably improve them a lot. And the improvements that will be made to these systems will probably borrow some features from things like cryptocurrencies. So you'll still have, I think you'll still have rupees and naira. However, you will probably use them in a different way. For example, in the future, you might be able to. I know you work in commodities, so maybe part of a commodities transaction is that, hey, I'll pay you this much once it gets on the ship, and I'll pay you the rest once it gets to the port, right? And actually deciding when is it on the ship and when is it on the port. These are kind of manual processes today, right? And somebody needs to verify if it's on the ship, if it's at the port.
Right.
Did the cargo get damaged in the middle during the journey? All these things are manual and need time to verify. And as a result, the actual payments and fulfilling those contracts is a kind of slow and menial process. Imagine in the future if you could draw up that contract to say that, hey, I'll give you 50% when it reaches the boat, and the cargo has like some kind of like GPS transponder on it, and you can automatically detect when it's at the boat, and at that time the money automatically gets sent, and then when it reaches the port, again a signal gets sent, and automatically the money goes. And if during the time the cargo is in transit, you have some sensor in the cargo that indicates that there's damage, then the money gets rescinded, right? So like, imagine being able to program all of these things into money, right? To just make transactions happen in a way that you can't really do them today. So yeah, that, for example, is a feature from cryptocurrencies called smart contracts, where you can program rules into the actual currency so that movements can happen without any human intervention. So yeah, it's just an example. But yeah, I agree with Rahul. I think the cryptocurrencies and sort of sovereign fiat currencies, which is what we call our money in India, rupees or whatever, they will coexist.
Okay, you could call it an asset class, right? Maybe it would qualify as an asset class. And if you have gold in that region, you're saying that maybe it could become that. It could become digital gold. Or the thing that what just strikes me a lot is that gold actually isn't accessible to everyone. It isn't. There's like, your class, strata, accessible, all of that stuff, right? It is something that you aspire for, something that you work towards and you get it. This, like the idea of Bitcoin, when you said it was so anti-establishment, it was kind of representative of a new world order. Maybe people who didn't really have a lot of trust in institutions would veer towards this and lean towards this. But then when you say something like it could eventually scale up and become as valuable as gold, doesn't that actually remove it from its accessibility across stratas or across social stratas is what I'm saying. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm saying just from understanding it, once you start adding so much value to something, does it again go outside the realm of my grasp if I can't
no, it's a
afford
good
it?
question. So I think one common misconception people have about Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is divided in units of one. Actually, one single Bitcoin is divisible until the 8th decimal point. So it's possible to buy 0.000001 Bitcoin, and that's obviously has a low, like it's not worth a lot of money. So anybody could afford that amount of Bitcoin, and so that in that sense, you don't need to have a certain amount of money to buy Bitcoin. You could buy 10 rupees a Bitcoin, 5 rupees a Bitcoin, 100, 500, whatever, and and then if that goes up in value, good for you.
I mean, but
Okay.
to your question, anyone with an internet connection will always be able to buy Bitcoin or acquire
use
Bitcoin. And that, or use Bitcoin. Yeah, exactly. So even though, I mean, if your question was, will the price of Bitcoin eventually become prohibitive to certain people using it? I think the real, or the thing you need to focus on would be that the idea is to have this monetary system or this network be inclusive to anyone with an internet connection. So people in countries where their fiat currencies have been decimated by hyperinflation, like Venezuela and Zimbabwe and stuff, can use Bitcoin for the purpose that Aaryaman suggested earlier as an inflation-resistant currency. And it becomes even more apparent the importance of Bitcoin to society when you think about the censorship-resistant features. So, for example, WikiLeaks was essentially cut off from any kind of financial oxygen back in 2011. And they moved towards accepting donations in Bitcoin because you couldn't censor that. Anyone can send Bitcoin to WikiLeaks without fear of a government or a corporation blocking those transfers. So it's incredibly important when you think of the kinds of people and institutions that have been persecuted, perhaps unfairly by governments, that they now have an alternative that has a number of flaws, but just the fact that it exists as an alternative is just insane to think about.
Okay, let's take a break there for 2 minutes. Also for me to gather my thoughts. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred, thewholetruthfoods.com, and Seat Tires. We really do appreciate the support. So the last year's been tough for all of us, and the second wave of COVID really hit us badly. To help those affected by the pandemic in India, the podcasting community has come together under the Pod for Change banner to raise funds through an exclusive NGO partner, Give India. Join IVM and Pod for Change as we look to make a positive impact in the life of those affected by COVID-19. You can go to tinyurl.com/podforchangeindia, and remember, somebody could really use the help. And now back to the promo. On the Simplified podcast, the gang explains the oxygen crisis happening in the country and tells us the various measures being taken to tackle it. On States of Anarchy, Hamsani Hariharan talks about how the geopolitical relationships shaped COVID response and the world order. As Indians, we're all familiar with acid reflux or heartburn, given the spicy food we consume. On The Habit Coach, Ashton has some simple solutions to counter that. Osama Moria explores the iconic neighborhood of Dadar and tells us its connection to outer space in Postcards from Nowhere. It was Dangle time on The Fighting Goat, as hosts Somesh and Arjun were joined by unbeaten MMA fighter and Commonwealth gold medalist Ritu Fogart. The traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh shares examples of various innovations that came up during the COVID times and helped us deal with the situation. And with that, let us get you back to your show.
Hello, welcome back, listeners. This is all you'll be hearing from me before I go back on mute.
No, I had one more question based on what Rahul was saying before we took a break, which was that Bitcoin opens up, kind of opens the door to people who have been shut out of financial institutions, or they haven't been able to access it in normal ways, quote unquote normal ways, funding. So if by that same extension of logic, wouldn't you say that it also makes it a perfect currency for nefarious transactions?
So, I mean, it was a big part of the Bitcoin narrative in the early days.
Like that
was
whole Silk Road
Yeah,
situation.
exactly. That Bitcoin, I mean, your identity on the Bitcoin network is pseudonymous. So it's just represented by a string of numbers and letters.
Yeah.
The counter to that is if you buy Bitcoin from not from a regulated exchange, but from an exchange, say in India, where by law they have to do know your customer, or they have to go through a know your customer process while signing up. KYC, yeah, yeah, exactly. So essentially, your bank account gets tied to your crypto wallet. So that the point, governments are making it harder to do that, or for you to use, say, or making it easier for them to track you and the kinds of shady shit you're doing with your crypto online. However, in the early days, because of this pseudonymity, it was used in a bunch of illicit transactions online, especially on Silk Road, for drugs or prostitutes or whatever the case may be. The simplest counter to that is, like, I think in 2016, the World Bank did a study comparing the various vectors of money laundering globally. And on a list of, I think, 10 different sort of items, Bitcoin came dead last on that list in terms of ease of use for nefarious activities. And the number one item on the list was cash. So if you were trying to buy a kilo of today and you wanted it to be untraced, like Ayushi, I'm sure this is relevant for you. I'm just messing to all the listeners.
I know, this is why I've been asking about it, because I want to know how to get my nefarious stuff.
Your bottom line is you're much better off using cash than Bitcoin. So I think it's a very weak argument because all of this stuff, like terrorism financing or money laundering, all of that stuff is like, I mean, as old as time, used in various different formats. So Bitcoin, yes, it's a new way to do that, but it's hardly the best way, nor is it the most prevalent way.
Okay, then I'm fine with it. Go.
You're good.
You're good. I'm good.
Yeah.
So now I think you can answer the question that started my whole thing: is what the F is Elon Musk doing?
I don't think he knows what he's doing. We can discuss Dogecoin if you like.
I'm so far away from this conversation that I really don't.
Okay, Rytasha, I'll break it down for you. It's insane.
Go
for it.
So all the stuff we've been talking about, right? Even the stuff which we've been acting like is serious stuff. All of it is just insane, right? The fact that somebody created like a form of money out of computer code without any backing of any country, any government, even the person who did it, nobody knows who that person is, right? And that form of money,
nobody knows
anything about that
now.
person. No, nothing.
Mm-mm.
Oh my God, this is like magic element.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole thing is pretty insane. And people who are in the Bitcoin community are kind of aware of the fact of how ridiculous this whole thing is, and how much, to the extent that it makes money and financial systems and stuff like that very apparently just figments of our imagination, which is what they are, right? The way that there's this guy Yuval Harari who in his book Sapiens argues that things like justice, the law, companies, all these things don't exist, right? Physically, they just exist because we collectively believe them. And this whole like money, Bitcoin and stuff really makes you think about the collective imagination that we call the financial system and money. And it's all pretty mind-blowing. So the guy who invented Dogecoin was like, yeah, well, like we invented magical money called Bitcoin. I want to, sort of lampoon the whole thing in a very self-aware parody or satire of the cryptocurrency space. And I will call that thing Dogecoin. And it will literally exist to be a meme coin modeled after the Shiba Inu Doge dog from meme fame. And yeah, because, we're just all self-aware people who, the fact that this whole Bitcoin thing, people are taking it so seriously, it's pretty funny even to us as Bitcoiners. So here's a literal meme coin and let's see what happens. And he put it out into the world. And obviously the internet adopted this meme coin like its long lost son. And it, Elon being the grandfather of internet culture has absolutely taken Dogecoin under his wing. Because I think Elon also just completely laughs at serious people who think that the world is a serious place and things like financial systems and law and justice and any of these things are anything more than collective imagination. And I think he is just like the Joker who just wants to see shit burn everywhere. So he is promoting this Dogecoin meme coin, and unfortunately today this internet joke Dogecoin
What do you do with a
is worth
Dogecoin?
$60 billion. You don't do anything with a Dogecoin. You don't do anything. You put money in it, and you might make money, but you probably will lose money. If you live by the Doge, you die by the Doge. So you can't do anything. You can't do anything with Dogecoin.
So you accept that this kind of stuff like reduces credibility to this conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it reduces to you, but when you think of something like that, and you're like, that dude who made a surfboard with the Dogecoin print, and then he sold it as an NFT or whatever, and he made millions of dollars.
What is NFT?
Your
No
voice
fun
came
tokens.
so
man.
loud.
I was gonna say like a much easier joke, like you mean the crypto markets, but damn, you went straight for it.
No, he went for the personal attack.
Damn, dude.
Like we call you the
Guest
show.
on the show. Yeah. That's
Call us out.
You knew you were signing
But it's
up.
all right. Instability is kind of a common feature, ironically. But
reduces the credibility of all cryptocurrencies because it is this absolutely dangerous expression of a collective desire and ability to reduce cherished institutions into nothing more than mere collective fantasies, which is what they really are. Yes, for that reason, it reduces the credibility of Bitcoin. The same way that the GameStop investing scandal reduces the credibility of traditional capital markets, or the behavior of n number of banks and governments reduces the legitimacy of the idea of banks and governments.
I'm sensing some defensiveness.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, look, nothing defensive. It's just factual, right? So the GameStop thing, for example, if you look at it, what happened with GameStop? A bunch of internet-based meme lords decided that they wanted to prop up GameStop, which is like a childhood nostalgic video game retailer. So they just pumped the price up, and they were like, look, this has nothing to do with GameStop's underlying profitability or investability as an asset. We're just going to do it because we want to do it. Screw everybody else. And they did pump the price up an insane amount, and they did ruffle the feathers of the financial markets completely. And my question to you is that imagine cryptocurrencies don't exist, right? This GameStop stuff happens. How are you gonna stop it? How are you gonna stop people from talking about which stocks they're investing in and acting on the advice of their fellow investors?
No, I mean, if you collectively decide to pull a prank, look at what you can do. That's essentially what GameStop turned out to be. But then, do you ask the question you're talking about how you could upend the market and you could create that volatility without something like Bitcoin, just from collective, action. But what causes Bitcoin this is something that I wanted to know. What causes it to fluctuate so much that it seems unstable?
Yeah.
In a day.
I jump in right now.
Great.
Yeah. Because I downloaded Binance today, guys. Okay. And then I just decided to check it out. I have not set up any Aadhaar card verification yet because I'm scared. Should one or should not one?
On Binance?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, you can. On an Indian exchange, should be fine. But I think you have to go through them to go Binance. But anyway, why it fluctuates in value?
Anyways,
it's a very young.
it just kept going up and down every second.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I mean it's a really young asset class and asset for one, and I feel like at least in my opinion, people have too lofty an expectation that Bitcoin will behave like a mature asset class when in fact it's a toddler. So when you compare the volatility of Bitcoin to gold, it's like, dude, of course this is going to be insane, man. Just look at the space. We have a Dogecoin. How can you expect anything sane to come out of this entire space? And in general, or at least, obviously this Elon stuff has moved the market. You live by the Musk, you die by the Musk, unfortunately. But I think it's going to be volatile for a long time till the last Bitcoin is mined or till a vast majority of the Bitcoin are in circulation, just because there is a huge fluctuation in demand and supply. We're in a very frothy bull market, where retail traders are charging in every day without any clear understanding of the market, putting money in things like Doge, and in a single day seeing their portfolios down 30-40% and thinking, what the fuck? A 5% move in 2 months would be crazy in the equity markets. So what is this crypto game? So I think it is a game in many instances. It's a global casino, and you should expect volatility in a good global casino.
Ayu, tell me about mining. I want to know about how do you
Can
mine
anybody become a
Bitcoin
miner?
Yeah. Okay. Look, there's a lot of
Yes.
mind melting stuff that I'm gonna try to distill into something that's somewhat palatable here. So,
Okay.
first thing you need to know is that Bitcoin is a computer program. It's an open source computer program, which means that anybody can read the code, like what is the Bitcoin program, right? Just like you have Skype or whatever on your computer, you can download
Yeah.
Bitcoin onto your computer. Any computer that has the Bitcoin program installed on it is called a node, right? NODE, a node. And all of these
Okay.
nodes automatically talk to each other and connect with all the other nodes that are running the same version of the Bitcoin program. And as those computers all talk to each other, that is called the Bitcoin network, right? All the computers together. So
ठीक है.
what we said about the point of Bitcoin is that Satoshi basically moved from the centralized model where there's one guy making sure the ledger is okay to a decentralized model where anybody who is a node has their own local copy of the ledger, and they have to make sure that their ledger copies stay intact, right? The process of actually maintaining a ledger for a bank today in, like, let's say our current system is actually quite expensive because the bank needs to make sure that transactions aren't duplicated, right? As I said, they need to make sure that the ledger history isn't altered. They need to make sure that transactions that people want to make actually go through. So they have like a live system that is running and stuff. Basically, there are a bunch of costs associated with running any ledger, any digital ledger. There's a bunch of costs, or even a physical ledger for that matter, but digital ledger certainly. In the case of a centralized system, the bank bears those costs, and the bank gets rewarded for that because they charge you fees on your payments and stuff like that. In a decentralized system, right? Why should, like me, I am somebody who has a node. I have the Bitcoin computer on my the Bitcoin software on my computer. If my
Right.
software has to do the same job that the bank is doing, which is verifying transactions, making sure that new transactions can go through, overall making sure that this payment system works, I am incurring those costs, right? Because that is time and energy that my computer is spending doing this work, right? And computers, as you know, consume electricity and they're expensive. So, like, why will I, as an individual, spend these resources to do this? There's no reason. But as it stands, but Satoshi, basically the guy who created Bitcoin, he said that I will give a monetary incentive for people to lagao their computers at this work, right? And that monetary incentive is in the form of transaction fees and something called rewards. So every 10 minutes, which is approximately the time it takes for a new batch of transactions to be processed in Bitcoin, right? Which is like a new block gets created. Every time that happens, a reward gets given to one lucky computer. Out of all the computers that have the Bitcoin software on it, one lucky computer gets a reward every 10 minutes, and they get to collect all the transaction fees that have been generated in transactions that have taken place over those last 10 minutes. That is the monetary incentive for people to make their computers do the task of verifying the ledger and making sure that everything is working and making sure the transactions can happen. Yes, Rytasha.
There are real people sitting with really big fancy computers doing
Yeah, well,
this.
they don't
Or
need to
do they
sit and
just-
do it. They just turn on the computer and
They
the computer
don't.
just
It
runs.
runs. That's insane. And a new block is made every 10
Yeah.
minutes.
Roughly how many transactions in that 10 minutes?
Not many, like 6,000 or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you get to, if suppose your node is the one that is the lucky winner of that 10 minutes. So all the transaction fees of those roughly 6,000 transactions comes to you.
But 1 minute, but it's not a random lucky winner. It's the person who, or the system that's put in the
No,
correct
so in
thing.
Bitcoin,
no, the combination.
that lucky winner is determined according to some kind of computational lottery. Right. So what I mean by that is, imagine
So
like
it
a
is a lucky
lottery
winner.
where you buy raffle tickets, right? And the more, imagine there's 100 tickets in total, right? And
Right.
like if you own one ticket, your chance of winning is 1%. But if you own 5 tickets, your
Right.
chance of winning is 5%. In Bitcoin, it is exactly like that, except instead of tickets, you need to have computers. So the more computers you have and the more computing power you have, the higher a chance you have
Okay.
of being that lucky guy. But what that effectively means is everybody is trying to get as many computers as possible, right? And getting that many computers is expensive, and keeping those computers turned on is extremely energy intensive, which is why
That's the
you
environment
often
thing.
hear that Bitcoin is very environmentally damaging because it consumes a lot of electricity, right? And of course, yeah, that's a whole other topic. We can discuss that if you want. But that's what mining is. Mining is the act of lagawing your computer into the work of verifying transactions, making sure the ledger is correct, making sure the transactions can happen, i.e., all the useful stuff that a bank or somebody else does. And miners do this because they are incentivized in the form of a reward which they may or may not win. And that's how it works as an incentive system.
Is
That's
it really hard to be a
dedication.
miner?
It's not hard to be a miner at all. You need to buy some computers, you need to install some software on those computers and plug that computer into a power source. But if you don't know how to buy and install software on those computers, then you can't do it. Then you need somebody who is a computer person.
Dude, I'm sure if you call up United, they'll send someone over to do this for you.
100%.
Hyper local joke is about a telecommunications shop in the hood, listeners.
I forget. Okay, so if you can become a miner, would either of you ever consider doing it?
No, your odds are, the odds are stacked against you. Back in the day, at least in Satoshi's vision, was this democratic network where anyone could run the Bitcoin software and could stand a decent chance of winning that mining reward. But like all things in the capitalist domain, what has happened now is you have giant farms of computers called mining farms that are just increasing the odds that a certain set of people or an organization wins those rewards over the single dude running the Bitcoin software in his bedroom. But that was the case in the early days. Lots of people literally did mine Bitcoin in their bedrooms. But that's just not the case anymore.
I would probably mine some currencies. I would not mine something like Bitcoin.
What are the other currencies?
There's many other cryptocurrencies. There's like 10,000 of them. Then there's one.
Are you serious?
Most of them are useless. The same way that most of the stocks in the .com bubble in 1999 in America were useless. Like one of the most famous companies at that time was a company called Pets.com, and they literally gave you information about pet ownership online, and it was worth billions of dollars. And I don't know, look, there's a lot of companies in that .com bubble that were useless. Just the way that a lot of these cryptocurrencies that are mushrooming right now are completely useless and will be completely useless. But like Airbnb, Amazon, Google, Uber, other companies that came out of the wreckage of the .com bust in 2001, there will be lots of very important companies and ideas that come out of the whole cryptocurrency boom that we're going through that will end up shaping the way that the internet works and money works.
What's your favorite one? No, give me your top 3.
Matic, Ether, and Atom.
This is not investment advice. He is not a licensed financial advisor. worth adding a disclaimer.
Oh no!
Don't go for it. Go for it.
Well, I was just about to say, like, why does that need to be? This is just his opinion. If you care, you can search. You can do what you want with it. What's your top 3?
Love all these names.
Yeah.
I know, they're so cool.
There was a great name. One of my favorite tokens in 2017 was Coin. I met the dudes that invented it. Essentially, this guy wanted to invent a tangible way for him and his friends to give a So it's genius.
Shut up.
I don't know if it's
I
still around.
love
but
it.
amazing.
I want. Is it of any value?
Yeah, it's of
I have no idea.
entertainment
I have
value.
no idea.
Yeah, that's all that I care about.
Exactly.
It's for the likes at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so have you guys invested in Bitcoin? Is that a dumb question, or you have?
I think it's a really dumb
30%
question.
of the Bitcoin in circulation right now. So if anyone can locate
And
his
is
password, just
Aaryaman
send it out.
single and looking for?
That's
Yes.
hectic.
This is a great platform to do this.
I
Agla Station.
It's not, dude. I
I
have
business.
like short of telling people that I'm available on this podcast, nothing has come of it.
Oh,
It's not a great platform for dating, but
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
Yeah.
guys, I
What's
don't
the best thing
own
that's come
30%
from
of the Bitcoin in circulation, but
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
too much. I'm like mind here already
Yeah.
since the last 1.5 hours.
One second. This you wanted to clarify, but not the fact that was investment advice. But this will clarify. This is cool, I think.
I'm a little worried about Rytasha right now, to be honest with you.
No, she's fine. She's fine.
She's not cried on this episode yet, so that's fine.
Is that normal?
Yet being
Yes.
the operative part.
Oh, is it?
It's normal for her to cry because this is a safe space. We use this show as therapy for each other. Sometimes we forget that other people might be listening. But you know, it's worked out, so we're not going to complain. I think this one people might actually listen. But so you
yeah.
both have personally you have invested in Bitcoin.
Yes.
Tell me, guys, how can I get rich? This is my question, which the listeners also care about.
Yeah, I got nothing for you on that one, Chief.
How do I invest in Bitcoins?
Yeah,
That's
That's
pretty.
good.
That's relatively easier than getting rich, I think. You just have to go to an Indian exchange. There's plenty of them out there. The good ones are, in my opinion, anyway, WazirX, CoinDCX. Are the ones I like using in any case. Very easy.
Oh,
to-
they're now all, dude, like literally we did not hear about all this till recently, and now people are making ads and all about these
Yeah.
apps. It's nuts.
Yeah. So like, because it's I mean, till fairly recently, there were the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, had clamped down on the crypto sector till the
Correct.
Supreme Court essentially allowed crypto companies in India to flourish in March of last year. So there just wasn't any scope to do big time advertising because essentially by in no uncertain terms, the government of India didn't seem like it wanted crypto to be a sector they encourage here. But thankfully, at least it seems like there's been a sort of new spring of both investors, investment, and just general interest from traders in India. So it's been cool to see and great to see them advertising with the IPL and things like that.
So you think that India is definitely in the future, hopefully the near future, would be a place where you could own, mine, trade, transact in cryptocurrencies? You see
No.
that as a future for it?
I think it's a toss up. I think since the last 4 or 5 years, every 3 months we get some headline saying someone or some minister wants to ban Bitcoin outright, which is reasonable because I guess to some extent you don't want to lose control over your monetary system, which in effect Bitcoin is allowing or enabling. So it remains to be seen. I would hope that they choose a more progressive path. But I mean, it's anyone's guess for how this eventually plays out in India.
Yeah, I think it's really important that they regulate it wisely instead of banning it, because it has a lot of promise as a technology that can really change the way the internet works. What do I mean by that? What is the difference between Bitcoin and the 10,000 other cryptocurrencies? And what is an NFT? I will answer all of these questions right now. So basically, Bitcoin said, and the whole point of Bitcoin, as you might remember, was to how do we get a random group of people in this computer network to agree on one common version of a ledger without having one central master or gatekeeper. And that's what Bitcoin enables.
Right.
And that's very valuable, very cool. Because previously, it was impossible to ensure that could exist, right? It was a big problem in computer science. How do you get multiple computers to agree on one common answer when any of those computers can basically act like chaos agents and basically disrupt the whole thing. Anyway, what Bitcoin does, we get right. Bitcoin allows people to come to consensus on one version of a ledger, despite not knowing each other or having to trust each other. That's very cool. Other currencies said, hey, look, this is really interesting. But in Bitcoin's case, the ledger only contains information about Bitcoin transactions and Bitcoin balances. That's very useful for moving around Bitcoin. But what if we took that idea and we made the ledger include any kind of data that we wanted, so that we could, as a network, as a community, agree on the state of anything, any information, instead of just Bitcoin transactions and Bitcoin data? What if we could also generate, for example, digital ownership certificates for houses, artworks, different things, and also have those certificates moving around inside this ledger? What if we could have any other kind of asset moving around inside this ledger? So that is the main difference in innovation between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And that's why Ethereum is very popular, because Ethereum is the main one that allows you to build all these different digital assets into this decentralized ledger. And one of the most popular forms of digital assets on Ethereum is something called an NFT, which is basically just an ownership certificate for something. It's just a digital ownership certificate. So that ownership certificate could say that you are the owner of a piece of art, or it could say that you are the person who is entitled to, I don't know, like open a smart lock with a custom app on your mobile phone. Like it's possible for me to have like a smart lock is something where like the lock is opened only if it's near a device that has a certain digital asset on it. So you could have this NFT be like a key to a smart lock, or it could be just an ownership certificate of the Mona Lisa, right? And what is the difference between a digital ownership certificate of the Mona Lisa and a physical one? Well, the physical one is signed by whatever, the Louvre or Christie's or the artist, and it's given to you, right? The digital one is also signed by those same people and given to you, but the physical one can be destroyed and can't be moved around the world easily. In the digital one, since it's digital, you can move it around the world very easily. It's very hard to destroy it, right? How are you going to destroy something that's digital? And it's just very convenient. So if you think about trading cards, like Pokemon cards and stuff like that, they are super, actually, like people like owning them and trading them, right? But one big issue with owning them and trading them is that you can damage them very easily, you can lose them very easily, and it's hard to trade them with people who are not in your immediate vicinity. But if these cards were digital, then you could do all of that stuff. You could track who owns what card and trade them easily. And the benefit here is that unlike the physical cards, where a company is manufacturing them in a factory and you have no idea how many cards they've actually manufactured, a set of digital cards, right, which are created on an open ledger that anybody can see the entire ledger, you can't really falsify or lie about the number of cards in production, or who is the original creator of a card, right, or who is the current or past owner of a card. None of those things can be lied about, because all of that happens on this open ledger, which everybody can see and agree upon at all times.
Everybody, anyone.
Yeah, anybody who wants to see the entire ledger history of any blockchain, any public blockchain at least, like all of the stuff we've been discussing are public blockchains. The same technology can also be implemented in a private network, but there's, that's a whole separate other thing. But the public ones, yes, anybody can go and see the entire history of all transactions, all accounts, all balances, everything.
Okay, so maybe I haven't fully grasped this yet, but this NFT thing of people selling their art, specifically talking about art, because that's kind of been like a very big thing on the internet. Even if it's like that girl who was in the meme, she had a meme when she was really young of that. She looked at the camera and there's a house on fire behind her, and it was like that no fucks given kind of a meme at its origin. And then recently I saw something that she sold that meme as an NFT, or I hope I'm saying it right. And yeah, she sold it. That it was into that system. And when you talk about that, and don't judge me for asking this, But how does she get the money? Or who does she sell it? Like, she sold it, but she sold a meme. She sold something that's basically already been, shared, liked, edited, changed, modified. Like, I mean, there's so many, I'm saying the same words, but you're selling, how does she sell something like that? And how do you decide that is something that can now have a tangible value to it? Just because, am I making sense? Is my question
People are
making
selling
sense?
tweets also.
Yeah, like how
apparently.
exactly. So how do you decide that you can sell something like this, that you've just attributed value to it?
Value exists where people believe it exists. So if people believe that piece of digital art, that meme has value for whatever reason, then they should be allowed to bid and own
But how did
the
she?
piece of that
I'm
art.
saying it's her face was on that thing, right? And at no point was it that she owned that picture. At no point was it that she was the originator of that meme in itself. That was a picture that randomly made it on the internet, and somebody else, like, I decided that, it looks like she wants to watch the world burn. And I'm going to slap that tag on and I'm going to share it. And I shared it
I
on
don't think she had
Imager,
any
9gag and all.
legal basis to do that.
That's what I'm asking. How do you have a
I
legal
don't think she
base
did.
to do something
I don't
like
think
this?
she did. But I think that people bought it from her because all of these internet freak shows, myself included, probably think it's cool to be able to say, hey, bro, I bought the Burning Girl meme from the Burning Girl. You know what I mean? So I think that's the only reason why it has any value. But
that's fine. That's all I needed to know.
On the more serious side, like the artworks that get sold for millions with a digital ownership certificate that's enshrined as an NFT, which, by the way, stands for non-fungible token. And fungible just means that one is equal to another one. So it's like basically uniform, whereas something like an artwork, it's unique, right? Like one artwork is not the same as the other. So therefore, you can think of NFTs as just unique things. Like each NFT has some different properties, characteristics, whatever. So when Christie's sells an artwork as an NFT, what they're saying is that, hey, look, the artist who made that artwork, called Beeple, he makes digital art. That art is available online. You can go and look at that art on your computer for free, right? The same way that you can go and look at Salvator Mundi by Da Vinci for free online. You can even print out Salvator Mundi and put it on art paper and hang it on your wall, right? Like nothing stops you from doing that. But nobody who comes to your house will ever believe that you actually own it. The ownership certificate for Salvator Mundi was given by Christie's to this Qatari prince or whoever bought it, saying that, hey, here is your certificate and we can attest that it is, official. This is a real Da Vinci work and we put our credibility and all on the line here with our signatures, right? And then that guy is like, hey, I am the owner of this work, even though all of you around the world can see it on your computers at any time you wish for free. You all know that I am the original owner because it was reported in the newspapers. And I have this certificate, which is in a safe in my house, and nobody ever sees that certificate. And that's how, I am the owner of this Salvator Mundi artwork. This guy, Beeple, he is an artist like Da Vinci, except his artworks are made on computers in the first place. And just like Da Vinci, you can see those artworks online. But the ownership certificate was not issued by Christie's as a paper certificate that is stored in a safe. It was issued as a digital certificate inside a blockchain where it can be viewed by anyone so that anybody can see who was the creator of that certificate, in this case, Christie's, who was that certificate signed by, in this case, the artist, indicating that it was his work with his consent, and who is the current owner of this artwork. And the owner of the artwork can do whatever they wish with that digital ownership certificate because it's programmable in nature. They can easily send it to somebody else. They can even break it up into 15 parts and give it to 14 other people. I don't know why they want to do that, but they could do that. And that's the thing you can do with like digital stuff is you can just do a lot of weird shit when things get onto computers. So it's pretty cool.
So it's basically just really cool.
Yeah, it's just basically saying that rather than having go through some hectic ordeal to sell this artwork and transfer physical provenance certificates from here to there, we can just transfer the digital provenance certificate, and it's much easier. And it's much easier to also identify fakes because the artwork and the certificate and its authenticity are both coming as one, and you can see the provenance and history of the artwork, going and know that it's not forged. or fake.
So the potential of this
The
is
potential
wide.
is what?
Like,
So
obviously can be.
something I'm super excited about. Sorry, Rahul, I've just been blabbing on here, but something I'm super excited about is NFTs, right? Like lots of people are buying NFTs, and not just for 70 million,
Yeah.
right? People buy an NFT for $20, $5, $100, $200, $5,000, whatever amount, right? And sometimes NFTs are really cool. Like I own an NFT, for example, which is my profile picture on WhatsApp and Twitter, and it's like this monkey pic, right? And I paid actual money to own this monkey pic. Now, what does that mean? That means that I get the rights to do whatever I want with this image. I can copy it, I can put it on t-shirts, merchandise, I can profit from this image however I like, I can generate derivative artworks of this image because I can always prove that I own this image. Yes, exactly. That is the monkey pic that I own. And I'm extremely proud of it. And the thing is that
be.
I believe in the future, people will buy NFTs for all kinds of reasons, right? One is sentimental value and bragging rights. Another is it could have some unique features. So owning, just by virtue of the fact that I own that monkey pic, I can access certain websites that are only built for those monkey pic owners. So imagine like a Miley Cyrus releases 100 NFTs to 100 of her fans, and only somebody who owns one of those NFTs can access a private website she creates where she does Zoom calls with her fans. But in order to access that website, you need an NFT. Or to post a comment on the site, you need an NFT. This is how social media networks will evolve. They will evolve in a way where different features will be unlocked for different people. And for example, my profile picture, I will only be able to set my profile picture as, or my digital avatar as a piece of digital art that I own. And something like a Fortnite skin or a World of Warcraft cosmetic inside that video game will be created as an NFT, which I can possibly take with me to other games. And lots of interesting stuff will happen at the intersection of NFTs, social media, and video games.
But you're sure that it won't. I mean, like, because sometimes what you're describing is like it's a paywall.
Yeah, it's a paywall, but it's for the owner of this specific digital asset. So anybody can buy it. Like, if you can't buy that digital asset, it's not like a paywall, right? A paywall says pay this much and you get in. This says own this asset and you get in. And if there's a limited amount of that asset, how are you going to get it unless somebody sells it to you, right? So then...
Right. So going with this monkey example, you own
I own this monkey pic, yeah.
Picture. So would I be able to say that you own the monkey NFT?
Yeah.
Is that how you would say it? Okay. So you own this and you decide that... So you decide how many versions of this can be purchased?
No, it's only one. It's only one. It's just one object. It's one unique object. I own one unique object.
Yeah.
And that object has that image that you see. That is the image corresponding to the object that I own. I cannot copy this image and I cannot create a new object. What I bought, this monkey is part of a collection released by a group called the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Okay, so the Bored Ape Yacht Club, they made 10,000 monkey pics. And they sold these 10,000 monkey pics for 20 crores, right? They sold out in 10 hours, right? People from the internet went and bought 10,000 monkey pics for around 20 crores worth of Indian rupees. And these people own these monkey pics, but the original creator of the monkey pic is the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So even if I create a new monkey pic NFT with the same image, I cannot lie and say that I am the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Because that is very obvious because of the way that these things work. They're all public and they're all open. I can never impersonate the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So that is why an original can easily be seen to be an original. So I like, even by creating 10 more of these non-authentic monkey pics, what am I really doing? Right? Like, why would anybody else give any value to my monkey pic? Whereas the Bored Ape Yacht Club, people will give value to the originals because that's what we tend to do, right? We tend to say that, hey, the original is more valuable than the fake. And because the Bored Ape Yacht Club creates certain digital experiences for the owners of those NFTs. So for example, there's a website that you can only go to if you own this NFT. If you are one of these 10,000 people, only then can you enter that website. And the website is called The Bathroom. And the whole point is, it's supposed to be, the Bored Ape Yacht Club is imagined to be this physical place in some futuristic, imaginary world. and where the apes all hang out when they're bored and they're tired of making money in crypto. They come to hang out in this physical club, and in the bathroom of that club, everybody graffitis the wall, just like a normal bathroom in a bar, right? Everybody leaves some graffiti on the wall. So this website you can only access if you own one of the monkey pics, and then you can actually put graffiti on the website. So like you can come and like put shit on the website, and it will stay there. And that is one of the digital experiences. But in the future, they will say stuff like, hey, for example, we will only ever make 10,000 original Bored Ape hoodies, and you need to actually redeem. You'll only get one if you redeem, your NFT. So your NFT could be redeemed for real world experiences. Like, hey, redeem this NFT to meet Miley Cyrus, for example. In the case of the Miley Cyrus one. You can make anything. You can make it do whatever you want.
And so all that you could do with this, your NFT, is that you could possibly split the ownership amongst the 4 people on this call. That's the most you could maybe do with it.
I don't know if that's possible with mine. I haven't fully checked out what it allows.
But okay, but if you bought an NFT that could do that, that's as much as you could. That's possible. I could
fractionalize it and give each of you a share, so that when the main NFT gets sold, whatever fees come in gets split 4 ways automatically to you guys. I could do that, right? So I could basically say that, hey, look, guys, I got this monkey pic. I don't want to sell it right now. In the future, I think I'll sell it for a lot. But right now, I need some money. So why don't you guys invest in my monkey pic? So give me a bunch of money. I'll take the money. In return, I'll give you the fractional ownership rights. So in the future, when the monkey pic is sold, you get paid out like investors in my monkey pic.
So you can still do that.
Yes.
Right. So I can invest in your NFT
you can invest
as
in my
well.
monkey pic.
I don't just have to own an NFT.
You can do anything. It's a fully programmable asset. You can borrow against it. You can do whatever. You can do like lots of crazy shit.
Oh.
You can stick it as collateral in you can do lots of stuff with it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it like actually from a trade perspective, not just like art, but if you could.
This field is insane. Anyway, this entire field is completely insane, and Rahul has not done the right thing by saying that nothing sane can come out of this field. Actually, I guess that's what I'm saying, because I'm saying that it's completely insane. That's exactly what I'm saying right now.
I was about to catch him.
But no, it's mad. And so lots of innovation is coming out of this field, and and it's just very exciting for everybody.
I feel like I'm in the middle of the future. Like when I was little,
this is the future.
Talk about very, very futuristic things. Today, I feel like I'm in a very futuristic space.
And I think that's why when someone like Elon Musk and all talks about this stuff and he gets involved, it makes it seem that much more wild or bizarre, is because he seems to be on this track of I have a vision for the future. It's going to look like we're on Mars. The cars are going to look like this. And we grew up thinking that was going to be the future. And so this person talking about it gets everyone all hyped and riled up, I think for the wrong reasons, because the way that you described it, I don't know, it makes so much more sense. It makes me feel like, I should be mining, or I should be turning everything I own into an NFT, and perhaps that's, oversimplification of it, but it seems more accessible to me now. Thank you.
I had to Google Bored Ape Yacht Club because I thought he was around with us. But it's not a joke, listeners.
Is 30% of Aaryaman's identity at this point.
Why do you always go for Aaryaman 30%? Like every...
Because he's a balanced kind of guy.
There's so much to learn.
But
I think we need to wrap up this episode.
Step 1. Yeah. Thank you for lesson 1.
Any parting words, parting wisdom for our young listeners who are listening? 18 to 24.
Should they? Okay, yeah, fine. That's we do the takeaway thing. Should our listeners be looking into this more? Do you think that this is advice that you would give to young 20-somethings? Consider it, think about putting some of your money in it. If you have some disposable income, is this a worthy place to park your money? I'm not saying that you have to give them investment advice, but
because we had a finance episode and spoke about all this mutual fund, SIPs and all that stuff. And young people are becoming more responsible financially.
Right. Yes. So is this some place that they could park their extra cash?
Put it all in monkey pics.
Fundamentally, crypto is just more fun. It's just more fun to play around with this stuff because of the absurdity of things like the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So it's not, and especially attracted by the gains in a frothy market like this. I think it's prudent to put a certain percentage of your portfolio in, and the amount of that tends to skew generation wise. At least from what I've found, is like younger people are happier to put a bit more in than say our parents or grandparents might be.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
but I mean, just I guess standard advice: do your own research. Don't do anything too crazy. Only invest what you're willing to lose. This entire space, like the government could easily decide to make it illegal overnight. So just take that into account, and just know what you're getting into. Everything could go up in smoke overnight. So buyer beware. But yes, it's certainly I mean, obviously, in our opinion, this entire space is going to be a permanent part of our future, and it's just fun to be a small part of that part.
Yeah, I'd love to. Just want to be.
Yeah, we're gonna Tash and I'm gonna come up with an NFT of our own. You'll see.
Great.
But thank you for coming on the show. Thank you
Yeah.
for all this chat. It was I mean, I frankly don't even care if anyone else understood. I needed this. So thanks. This was a way to get like an hour and a half of your time.
Thank you so much, yeah, for taking the time out to speak with us. And is there, other than Tigerfeathers, which is your Substack where our listeners can find you, is there any other way they can engage with you, pick your brain, Twitter, all these other social media things?
Yeah, if any of them are starting companies and they want money, they can talk to me and I can see if I want to give them money.
If you're joking around, this is not the place.
No, that's my job.
What if there's some sweet
That's my-
kids who
no,
have
my
ideas?
job. I invest in people's
Okay.
companies as a profession. So
I love this. Listeners, he's your guy.
Give them your Twitter handle.
you give them my Twitter handle. It's like you can put it in a bio in the thing. Like, you want me to like spell out
Yeah, okay.
my Twitter name? So I mean I can AARYAMANVIR AaryamanVir on Twitter. Sorry, Ayushi.
Done.
I mean, maybe people are super confused, right? Maybe some people still haven't worked out that all of us are friends and stuff, or you think that there's no chance of that.
Oh, we didn't do that. We just
Yeah,
didn't
we
do
just
that
straight
part.
jumped into like me like being savage to Rahul and vice versa, and the audience probably like what is going on? Like, why is everybody so much in
You know,
chaos?
if you've made it this far, then we'll give you a fun tidbit. We all went to school together. And yeah, I mean, like we've been friends for a long time and now a lot of our friends are doing cool things. So we pester them into talking to us on the podcast and we use them for free.
All credit goes to Ayushi. I have done nothing. And listeners, you know that.
They know that already. It's pretty much the MO of the show. But Rahul has featured as a topic on the show. And you can actually go backwards and listen to, I won't tell you which, but if you listen to any of our 1 to 25, he will be mentioned in one of them. And you want to go listen to all of them because it's a really good story. It's really good. It involves
Mistakes 50 through 60 of my life. Is there better? Is there a nicer joke? I don't know. Yes. Sure.
But no.
Where can they find you,
Yeah.
Rahul, if they want to bother you on social media?
On Twitter, I won't do the dumb thing Aaryaman just did of literally spelling out his name. So I'm sure we'll have our names in
We will tag
some
you,
form.
yes.
Yeah,
That
let's just
wasn't
do
dumb
that.
though. We spell out our name every single time. So I don't know, Rytasha, why you're agreeing with him because
You
we
spell
do
out
it
her name every single time.
No, we don't. Not every
every
time.
single
That's-
episode. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at JustAyushi or at RYTASH on Instagram. So she's trying to be cool in front of you.
Okay. I think your listeners, I'm sure, know where to find you guys. But yeah, just Twitter, the usual.
And if you like this show and you want to listen to such other excellent content, you can find the rest of the Agla Station Adulthood catalog on IVM Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And there are other podcasts that you can listen to on IVM as well.
In the whole blockchain of podcasts.
Thank you
I feel like,
guys.
no, I think we did it wrong.
Thank you for
Thank you for having us,
guys.
and
Keep doing your
apologies
thing.
to whoever had to hear this.
Congratulations on season 2. Keep this
Thank
party
you.
going.
Thanks, y'all are
Thanks
sweet.
for-
Bye.
Want to learn something new and have a few minutes to spare? Well, then go for the Traveling Professor's Diary, where I, Siddharth Deshmukh, the Traveling Professor, will help you glean from all the insights that I've gained from wherever I've traveled, learned, taught, and repeated. Join me every Tuesday and Thursday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shunetro,
and me, Farhad,
on our show Gay BCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of Gay BCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.